Good morning, everyone. The birds are out there. They're not as noisy as they are, but I do have one lone crow over there. It's peaceful and quiet here, unlike other parts of the world. So Israel has got to remain strong. You got to be careful not to overreact, but to appropriately react. The world wants them to just roll over and die because the world's being run by Satan. Lebanon is the current antagonist. Of course, ultimately everything goes back to Iran, but Lebanon successfully launched a missile into the Golan Heights at a playing field where some children were playing football. I don't know if it's American or European football, but nevertheless, they were playing games, and 12 were killed. It's the largest attack since October 7th. Nowhere near the numbers in comparison, but it was so bad that even Lebanon stopped firing at Israel for a little while. And it happened because they were just launching things. They weren't trying to necessarily hit anybody. But you keep poking somebody, and you can eventually poke an eye out. The only reason they're still in existence right now is Netanyahu was out of the country. He was here in America. Well, he's back. He landed this morning early, and as of the last I saw on Amir Safate's site, they were in a meeting to discuss what to do next. This requires a massive attack. No games, no launch a few sorties to go in and hit out a couple of places. This doesn't require as much as the October 7th, but it requires one far more than what they've done so far since they've been going in. If you don't hit back stronger, and you got to do it with the confidence. Israel, throughout its history, has had to fight, and when they had the confidence, they could fight anybody and anything, and it didn't matter. Physical wars don't matter to God. Spiritual wars matter. If you've got the mental capacity to be faithful and spiritual with God, He will help you to beat your enemies physically. And you might not have to do anything, or you might do something that is totally radical. Get all the Israelites to march around the city until the walls fall. That's not something that a human would have come up with, only God. So we're going to go back to Numbers and see what it was like before they actually got into the land. What the land looked like and what they were up against. And the lesson that they learned is they weren't ready to possess the land because they weren't faithful yet. Not entirely. So turn with me to Numbers 13:1. And the Lord said to Moses, "Send out for yourself men to spy out the land of Canaan." The land promised to them by God. They're finally there, well, close to it. They're in the desert still. They're still wandering, but it's time to leave. The land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelites, from each of their fathers' tribes, send one man who is the leader among them. So there's 12 tribes. There's going to be 12 leaders. So at the consent of the Lord, Moses sent them out from the wilderness of Paran, which is further south. All the men were leaders of the Israelites, and these were their names. And I'm not going to bother to read all these names. You can read them here if you want, starting in verse 4. It's sort of like reading the genealogies in the New Testament. They're long, and then, okay, those are nice names, and maybe I struggle over them. I mean, there's some like Hori and Simeon and Caleb, we should know, and one of them he names Joshua. These are names that are familiar, but there's other ones that are Issachar, Igal, or Egal. So you can look at the names. After they're all picked, when Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, he told them, go up through the Negev, the desert, and into the hill country. So they're going to basically be climbing up. The desert they've been in is pretty low. And we know, like the Dead Sea area, it's called the Dead Sea for a reason. Nothing lives there for the most part. It's the lowest elevation on the planet. So anyhow, see what the land is like, whether the people are strong or weak, few or many. Is the land where they live good or bad? Describe it. Are the cities where they dwell open camps or fortifications? This is a standard military tactic. Go figure out what this battle is going to be like so we know how to prepare. Is the soil, and of course then now they're getting into the nitty-gritty of why they want to go there. Is the soil fertile or unproductive? Are there trees in it or not? Be courageous and bring back some of the fruits of the land. Bring some spoils back so we can actually see for ourselves and not just take your word for it. This is supposed to be the land of milk and honey. And they want them to bring back fruit, and this was the season for the grapes. They need grapes to make wine. So they went up and spied out the land. Spying doesn't mean they're going in as an army. They're probably going in small groups, just wandering around. What are you doing here? Oh, we're just visiting friends. They're not going to ever tell them, we're here to spy out the land so we can take it over. No. We're going to see what the land is like. From a physical point of view, the report was correct. So they went up and spied out the land from the wilderness of Zin as far as Rehob towards Labahomath. Okay, so we can look up some of these names and see them on the map. Now, I don't use visual aids very much here. I might throw up a map of this, but you can find where these are at. These are old-time names. They mean something. But I'm not going to get sidetracked with that. That's not what we're reading this for. They went up through the Negev and came to Hebron, where Ahiman, Sheshai, and Talmai, the descendants of Anak, dwelled, an old enemy. It had been built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. So these are old dwellings. They've been there a long time. And when they came to the valley of Eshcol, they cut down a branch of a single cluster of grapes. Those can be big. It's like grabbing a bunch of bananas, They're big. Now grapes, if you cut the whole vine loose, can be big. Which they carried on a pole between two men. That tells you how big it is. And they can't be gone very long now because they will go bad. Anybody who buys grapes and brings them home from the market now know that they will go bad soon enough. Now, ours last a little bit longer than theirs back then because they do things to them. But a lot of grapes. They also took some pomegranates and figs, fruits that we're familiar with from that area. Because of the cluster of grapes the Israelites cut there, that place was called the Valley of Eshcol. Okay, so they do all this stuff. They go home and they're going to tell everybody what they saw. Remember who sent them. God asked Moses to send some people. So God is in charge of this little expedition. After 40 days, the men returned from spying out the land. And when they went back to Moses and Aaron, the whole congregation of Israel in the wilderness of Param and Kadesh, they brought back a report for the whole congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. Let's get the easy part out of the way. And they gave this account to Moses. We went into the land which you sent us, and indeed it is flowing with milk and honey. Of course, it had to be, because that's what God said. Here was some of the fruit. In verse 28, 13:28, nevertheless the people in the land are strong, and the cities are large and fortified. We even saw the descendants of Enoch there. You want to go back to David and Goliath? The Amalekites live in the land of the Negev. The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites, these are all enemies of Israel, live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live by the sea along the Jordan. And Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, we must go up and take possession of the land. After describing all that, Caleb says, we must go. A man of God. But the men who had gone up with him replied, we cannot go up against these people, for they are stronger than we are. So they give the Israelites a bad report about the land that they had spied out. The land we explored devours its inhabitants. Did they see anybody devouring somebody? I don't know. And all the people we saw were of great stature. We even saw the Nephilim there. You remember them? Creations of the bad angels, the descendants of Enoch, that came from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own sight. We must have seemed the same to them. Well, that's how they were able to spy, because they seemed like they didn't have anything that they could threaten anybody with. But they didn't wave God around. Caleb and Joshua were the only two that said, let's go. Everybody else, so 2 out of the 12 said, we can do this. Everybody else said not. Guess what? They didn't get to conquer the land. It angered God. And they had to wander in the wilderness a little longer. God can handle our physical problems easily. If we have faith and trust in God, He can handle the physical stuff. Whatever it is. Whether it's illness, whether it's a big bad adversary, whatever it is, God can handle it. Israel is going to be outnumbered so much that on their own, with all their tools that they've got, they're not going to be able to save the country and the people. God will have to do it for them. But they're not ready yet. They got to be softened up. They got to call on the Lord. Jesus said, I'm not coming back until you call on the name of the Lord. They're not doing that yet. They think they can defend themselves. And up to a point they can. Satan hasn't pulled out all stops yet. They're trying their best to soften the proxies. They soften Gaza. Gaza's not going to be a big problem anymore. There's still fighting going on, and it will for a long time, because there's terrorists among the people. And the people really, there's a lot of them there that would rather have the terrorists than Israel, because they've been taught from childhood to hate Israel. Israelites have been taught from childhood to hate Christians. It just propagates. And God shakes his head saying, I did not create this. And he's right. Satan's been here influencing people. But if he wasn't here, we would still mess up. It just would take us longer. And God doesn't want to drag this out. He'd rather all this middle stuff be gone. All the stuff in the book of Revelation after the letters until, I don't know, chapter 21. Everything in between, if we could just go through that in a millisecond, I'd be happy with that. But he's got lessons to teach. Israel, you need to stand strong. You need to believe in God. Don't trust on your own initiatives. Don't look to the United States anymore. Don't look to any other countries. Now, the world's seen this attack, and countries all around the world now are telling their people to leave Lebanon. They've poked the tiger too much, just like they did for the Gaza war. Now the Lebanese war is going to increase. And of course, the United States in our weak leadership is up there saying, don't escalate this. Turn the other cheek. And it's not what this is about. Okay, so we're going to see things escalate. It's going to get to the point where it's going to appear that they're going to annihilate each other. It's not going to be pleasant. The Antichrist won't come back if they're just fisticuffs. They're just slapping each other. That's not going to be him. That's not his style. Satan's style is to come in and appear to be the savior, the one to keep them from destroying each other. They're not there yet, but we're getting very, very close. He may step forward. We may get to see some more revelation happen this year. I don't know if we're going to see the Antichrist in his final form, but we're certainly going to see him in his seventh king form. We probably already know who he is. It's not Trump. They call Trump Hitler. They call Trump the Antichrist. Anything that's derogatory, they call him. And they will get some people to buy into the stupidity of that comment, when the people making the comments are actually closer to Hitler and the Antichrist than anybody else. So it's going to escalate soon, quickly. It's going to go very fast. We don't know. We know the length of time that the tribulation is supposed to take. Well, I don't like to call it tribulation. That's what everybody else calls it, the 70th week. We don't know the full length of the actual time, and we don't know the length of the events within it. How long does it take the seals? Well, the seals happen over the whole timeline. The trumpets overlap. The bowls are in there in the second half. We can place things, but we don't know the length. It's not important. We don't know the actual length of anything. It's not important. It's God's timing. The events that are going to happen are not meant for the church. They're meant as a final wake-up call. All the punishment that Israel suffered throughout the entire Bible was to get them to turn to God. Stop turning to things of the world. And they brought idols back from conquering nations. They were punished. That's happened. They were punished. When they built a golden calf, they were punished. And God says he's jealous. He means it. Don't have anybody else before God. But call on him when you're in need. And then follow up. God, protect me. Well, God's going to say, attack first. It's usually what he did with the Israelites. Now, the type of attack may be different, but Israel's going to respond. But they're trying to weaken the proxies before they go after Iran. They've got plans to attack Iran. You know that the plans are already drawn up and ready to go. But they're trying to weaken the proxies, because if they don't, Iran will say to the proxies, launch everything you've got. And they're trying to soften that blow. Gaza is not a major threat anymore. Lebanon still has tens of thousands of weapons. And they could start launching them from the northern parts. Right now, Israel is attacking, midway up and down. They're not even going very far up, and they're very specific targets. But they're just as dug in as Gaza. One of my neighbors. I got to go find here in a little bit of my rangers here. I haven't seen them in a couple of days because I had to go into town for my son, and then yesterday I worked. It was a fun day of working. Got to see some friends I hadn't seen in a while. I get to act. We're just doing some pickup lines to add additional people to the movie, but it's fun. But I didn't have to work as hard as I thought I was going to have to work, because we had other people there that were willing to step in. And that's the key. If there's other people to step in and help out, it takes some of the load. Don't do this by yourself. As a minimum, you're with God. But even at that, He doesn't want us to do things. He sent 12 people in to spy. He didn't just say, go pick one. He wanted everybody to have ownership of this, and they did. No, that's not him. All right, I got to get this wrapped up so I can get on with this. How are we doing on time? I'm trying to keep these under 30 minutes for you guys. I know that I've done longer in the past, but I can tell by how much people watch these. YouTube tells on you. I don't know if you're aware of that, but they tell me how much of the video you watch. I can see parts of the video do better than others. They give me statistics so I can see what's going on. So I try to adjust. I want you guys to be happy with what you're watching as well as the content. All right. It's going to start speeding up here a little bit. We've been in the doldrums for a while. It's kind of the calm before the storm. It's going to start, it's already started ramping up, and it's going to start ramping up fast. So get ready. Pull your boots up. Buckle your seatbelt. Get ready. Till we meet in the clouds. God bless. Here's a bit of a view inside the tent, so you can see where I film. I sit here. There's headphones if I need them. I've got my table over here. There's my coffee mug, my laptop. I've got some clothes hanging up. There's my air conditioning. Yeah, I had pizza. I brought that back from work. There's my cooler down there. My table over here, microwave, coffee maker. I got all the comforts of home in here. And that's the view that I get to look out at. I have a tarp that goes over the top so I can walk out there and not get wet. Get inside, it's like having a front porch. And so far it's held up pretty good. It came loose one time because I had it staked in the ground and I didn't use the stake that had the top on it properly, and it pulled off. So I fixed it. That's why you test things. You don't think of every possible thing that can go wrong until you actually test it. They've been testing the spacecraft for its launch, so it's going to be taken off soon. All right, have a blessed day, everybody.